Welcome back to Your Property Empire. Our viewer dilemma of the week came in from Daryl in Melbourne, and he asks, I'd like to know how to renovate my existing property without overcapitalising. Is it worth the risk of spending $100,000 in my suburb to do renovations, and will I make a profit when I do sell? It's the multi-million-dollar question, isn't it, Charles?
Well, first thing is, when you quoted 100,000, does it really end up at 100,000 when you're getting renovation? Just got a renovation done, quoted about 55, but a few more additions, and before you know it, you start putting extra things in, and it actually came up at 97,000. And it's not the builder's fault, it's just that you get carried away with things, and it doesn't take long. So it's extremely difficult to
And there's probably thousands of those things. I mean, I always say double your renovation budget, double the time, and then see if you're still going to make a profit.
Some places should just be knocked down, but you know, the best places to renovate are kitchens and bathrooms. Obviously that's where people like to see things happening and spend most of their time. But it's not an easy task. Everybody sees that happening on these shows, and those shows are very, very differently set up.
You mean TV's not real?
Well, it's not as real as it is for you and I, but we keep it reasonably real here, don't we? But nonetheless, you get these homes and you see these people running around, they're fixing them up real quickly, they don't take into account the amount of hours and time that goes in it and all the benefits they get and so on. And the sponsors that kick in things, and it looks like you can do things like that. Years and years ago you could. It's not that easy nowadays.
Because typically with those shows is having the latest, greatest kind of things. I mean, that's overcapitalising for most properties, isn't it?
It certainly is. And one of the things that I noticed too, especially with renovations, you have to be very careful with the renovation. When somebody adds a fourth bedroom on, whenever I've sold homes in the past, or I've seen them described by real estate agents within the industry, it's not a 4-bedroom home. It's a 3-bedroom home with a 4th bedroom extension. And that's how it is always presented. And so it does put a lot of people off.
And I've always tried to interview valuers. I mean, real estate agents, good people to speak to as well, but valuers. And quite often they would say, well, it's still the same square meterage. Yeah. So if you're taking down walls and doing various different things and spending, say, 100 grand, if you haven't actually increased the floor space area, it's still the same size for the valuer, which is hard to compare like with like.
You know, valuers and real estate agents are always the best of friends, Chris. So I have to agree. But you know what it's like when you've got an apartment complex and you spend a lot of money on your apartment. How does a valuer decide, because you're sitting in the same space as everybody else, if you spend $100,000 on an apartment that's going to be worth more than every other apartment in the complex? It's pretty hard to do that.
Yeah. So really the only way to guarantee that you're not going to overcapitalise is to compare it with comparable properties that are renovated in the same area, isn't it?
And we all know there's plenty of data around for people to do that, and I think that's really the important thing. You know, I think renovating can be a lot of fun and a lot of joy when you sit back and look at the result, but it's pretty hard to make money on it. That's pretty hard.
Yeah, so going on to the agent sites, quite often they're sold prices, and also realestate.com I think has got sold prices as well for most of the suburbs as well.
Yeah, they certainly
and that's
do.
All free information.
All very free, yes. Yeah.
The other thing I had down was getting advice from the real estate agents and the property managers. Look, if you're going to renovate and you're going to live there for 20 years, sure, do whatever you want, put in green kitchens and pink curtains or whatever else. But if you're thinking of reselling, it's really important to do it to the demographic, isn't it?
Yeah, my son just renovated a home for himself to move into, and he has a very unique style about him. And I walked in and I saw some things, and I just said, Joe, he said, well, Dad, this is where I want to live. And I thought, you're absolutely right. He's going to stay there for years. It just doesn't matter, does it? But if you're doing it to sell, you really have to stay within the standards.
Exactly. So put an accountant's hat on at times and sometimes look at the numbers. Now, for more